Yeah. No front number. Yeah.
Welcome to Unashamed Unafraid, another professional episode. We are here with Jeni Brockbank.
Woo.
She is the executive director of a nonprofit called Her Wings Unfold and the lead host of Relational Trauma SOS. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Really honored to be here.
Before we get into this, I just wanted to share a couple personal thoughts on the way we do things here. We have different professionals and different stories that come on. And I've been at times tempted when I listen to the rerun or the recordings once we publish to kind of only just focus on the ones that are addiction recovery related, because that's what I struggle with. And I had an experience that kind of changed my mind on that. And if you're out there and you're struggling with addiction, this might be helpful in helping you see how these types of episodes where we talk about the spouse's perspective or betrayal trauma, how that connects to you in a really, really deep way. We had a recording, I think it was last time, where we brought in a lady named Roxy, and she wrote the book, which is called Forgotten in the Battle of Sexual Addiction. And it was so insightful to me. I took some notes, and when I went home that day, I talked to it was the next day, I talked to my girlfriend, and I asked her about some of the things that had been brought up about anger and pain. And I asked her what her experience was related to that. And it totally changed the way that we connect about my addiction. So I just wanted to invite you, wherever you're at in recovery land out there, if you feel like this doesn't apply to you, I just wanted to invite you to step into this, because this, wherever you're at, whether you're the spouse, whether you're struggling with addiction, this is going to be very impactful. So Jeni?
Can I jump in with something right there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, yes. We're going to be talking about a program that is written for those who've experienced another's abuse, addiction, adultery, or abandonment, right? But I just want to mention that doesn't necessarily just apply to us as spouses. And in fact, I have a couple of recovering addicts coming to one of our meetings because they have also been affected by that, and it's really cool to have a broader audience who can do that. I think it's a little tricky. We don't necessarily want that to be the case all the time, because what we find is sometimes those who are not yet thinking healthy enough can use tools like that to cause harm. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to see that. But for those maybe who have some recovery and they're like, you know what, I've got this childhood trauma or whatever.
Right.
Like sometimes and what we have here really helps people work through a lot of those things in just a really compassionate way.
Wow. I love the point that a lot of times addiction is rooted in deeper things like trauma and abandonment. And people who are caught in addiction are often experiencing those same things themselves.
They are.
Very good point.
Totally.
They are.
So then, I know we're going to get into it. Is it any gender go, men, women? What is that like for you?
Yeah, so the program is written generally. And what the power is then you can create specific groups. So we have
Men's group or women's group.
Exactly. So we have some women's only betrayal trauma groups, but we have this general meeting on Monday nights, and actually we're growing. And so we're opening up new meetings and things. So it's hard to say. If you want to check our website, it's ts12anon.org often, and we might have a new meeting for you then. And we'd love to see, a men's meeting start up or something like that, to where men look at it and go, hey, this is really helpful. And I can learn to hold myself in compassion, because really, as you're called Unashamed Unafraid, right?
Right.
Shame is the root of it all,
Totally.
and it's just so painful to overcome. And I think that as we work through things and we do so with just this honest heart, and by the way, recovering addicts are some of my very favorite people on the planet, because
Me too. I hang out with a lot of them.
there you go. and emphasis on recovering, right? I mean, but the thing is what I find is those really working in recovery are humble. They're honest. They're accountable. They care how they affect me, and
Yeah.
and if I've messed up, they hold space for that and let me work through things instead of treating it, really harshly. So I just want to say, like, I think people in good recovery could benefit from healing with this program as well.
So,
Awesome.
Jeni, what led you, or what experiences in your life led you into this?
Yeah. So a little bit of a backstory, and I'll try to make it concise a bit. But I had gone through quite a bit of recovery as the wife of a sex addict. And as such, it started to get pretty intense. And I would say there was abuse involved. It was just really scary for a while there. But what I started to find was that what I was using wasn't necessarily enough for me. I had already been to LifeStar, and I loved LifeStar, gained a lot from it. In fact, can I share that Chris
Totally,
and
yeah.
Autumn, they totally came and spoke to our first LifeStar
We
group.
spoke for years there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool and really hopeful, and I learned so much.
That's
But
funny because Chris was my facilitator at my first 12 steps that
Really?
I ever went to.
oh,
Yeah, so-
that's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Really powerhouse for good, just you and Autumn, though.
Thank you so much.
It's true. And so that was great, but it's only a short, you do it for a few years and then you're done. And so then I was like, what am I going to do next? And 12 steps was just kind of what people were doing. And so I remember I worked Anon, which is for spouses of, loved ones of sex addicts. And I remember the very first time I picked up the Anon book, and the spirit was so strong saying, we can do better. And I started to notice this is triggering and this is triggering. But when I go to meetings, those women were powerful and they loved the work and they were engaged in it. And so I just thought, well, you just take what you like and leave the rest. That's the lingo. You
Right.
take what you like
Right.
and leave the rest.
Well,
And
that's a great attitude. If everybody had that attitude, there would be a little less frustration,
Yes, for sure. And to me, it becomes a bit of an excuse to not fix things that were harmful.
Oh, because a lot of people don't like a lot of the stuff
Mm-hmm.
because it's painful and they don't want to
Yes.
go that deep. And like, even I was just we had a booth at the Faith Matters Restore 2025 conference.
Cool.
And we were there, and there was people like therapists and coaches that I was talking to there. And I'm like, your husband needs to come to boot camp. And they're like, oh no, like, no, we're not doing that. And it's too painful. Or I'd talk to her about going to the Heart of a Woman. And she's like, yeah, I'm not in that place and not willing to go there. I'm like, got it. Like there's a lot of people that are just not willing to do the work. And so they may not like it because it's just painful and it's too painful for them.
Yeah. And also, it was written a while ago.
Yeah.
AA was, and that's what it's based off of,
Yeah.
right? It's old, which is, and it's powerful and it's
That's what we're
amazing.
doing the new recovery book that we have coming out, the new program coming out for Unashamed Unafraid recoveries
That's amazing.
book. So
Yeah.
So this is your way of improving on some where there were holes in the existing literature or groups or,
Mhm.
or resources available to people.
Yeah.
You felt kind of a calling to step into this and improve on some of that.
I did. And in fact, like, I remember I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I had been sitting in the temple a year ago in July.
So
And-
July 24.
July of 24. And I just had this conversation. I was like, you're trying to tell me something, God. I was just sitting in there listening. I was like, yes, I am. And it was this whole conversation. By the end of it, I was like, you want me to write a trauma-sensitive 12-step program? He said, yes, I do. And I took a deep breath and I was like, I'll do it.
What are you talking about? What?
Yeah. But at the time I was like, I could tell a nonprofit has to be behind it, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So I knew of another nonprofit that I thought this project would align with their values. And in the end, they chose to not pursue it at this time, but I still had that direction. You know, I was like, what am I going to do? And so here I am.
Well, so what got you to the place where you could feel, hey, I need to like start trusting God in my life? And I'm not saying you never did, but I'm just saying, like, what was it that you were like, now's the time to just go and listen to what he has to say?
Mm-hmm.
What?
Well, that's part of the interesting story actually so last September, I was experiencing post-separation abuse,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very intense, and I was homeless because of it with children, you know, and it was not good, to say the least. But I remember being in this really beat up old motel room, and I just felt this really strong, this is partly why I am giving you time right now to do this. And so really what I'd say is that little motel room became sacred space where I sat for 2 months, basically, and I wasn't sure where I was going to live or how things were going to turn out. And so that was my time to really jump in and to say, okay, well, this is what God wants me to do with my time, and I'm not doing very well. Maybe this will help me, you know, and it did. It's part of my own recovery, I think, to have done that. And it's been a really great blessing to me as well. In fact, can I tell you some of the differences? Would that be all right? In traditional 12 steps
Yes.
versus
Yes,
what we
I was
provide?
really about to ask.
Okay, there you go. So traditional 12 steps for family members. So any kind of Anon program, whether that's Al-Anon or S-Anon, you know, it's like all of the Anons they're for loved ones, basically.
Right.
They are built on a codependent model. And so what they did was they took AA, which is, of course, for alcoholics, and they took that and they transformed it using the exact same, most everything, you know, like process and things to apply to family members. Well, in order to do that, they're created on a co-addict or a codependent model.
Mm-hmm.
And why that can be damaging is because it just has a different view of why people show up like they do. And so like a codependent model is basically saying, if you show up this way, you have attracted this into your life. That's not always true. If there's a power differential, that's not necessarily true, you know, that not necessarily, right? And sometimes it's like the truth was hidden and we didn't know, or maybe the behavior started years later or something like that, to where there really was no choice. We didn't have enough information. And that's not to say we're perfect. Everybody has things to change for sure. But what we started to see and what we know now is that there's this trauma base to these kinds of things. And so when people are showing up, so for instance, I healed, you know, in community with wives of sex addicts. Well, a lot of times, so say a wife is being controlling, and we look at that, well, they're safety seeking. And no, we don't want to show up that way. No, we don't want to behave in those ways. But when we can look at it and say, this is why they're doing it, then we meet them at a different place instead of saying, this is because of you and you're contributing in this way. It's like, okay, well, what can we do then to create safety? What can we do to get through grief and mourning, or to create boundaries, or whatever you need so that you can show up differently, you know, and you can, instead of being controlling, if that was if that was the behavior, for instance, that somebody would want to change, then we could meet them differently, hold it with compassion and say, it makes sense that you don't feel safe. It makes sense. And let's get your needs met in healthier ways. And so the whole program has like self-compassion built throughout the entire program. And we work very hard to keep like shame under control.
Yeah. I've experienced everything you're saying in a really powerful way in my own life.
Yeah.
You know, it from the perspective of someone who's experiencing addiction. And so I think it's clear to me as you're talking, this is just a principle of healing in general. I'm curious how you discovered that, though.
Yes. So I had this really eye-opening experience in Lifestar, actually. And I remember I was in a really severe situation, and boundaries weren't till later in the program. And so I went to my therapist. And I was like, I'm so frustrated. I could have used this information, before. I would have loved to have been safe. And he explained to me, well, first you have to create all of these things, and you have to have safety, and you have to understand emotional regulation, and you have to have community. And he started explaining it to me. And it was the first time I started to grasp what a trauma model was.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was when I started to get it better. And I've started to see like Lifestar was built on its own kind of a trauma model. And then AppSats, they use a trauma model in their work. And so we developed that as well. So we use, and we like to say we meet people where they are, because we let people identify the 3 stages of a trauma model that we use are from Judith Herman. And stage 1 is safety and stabilization. Stage 2 is grief and mourning. And stage 3 is integration and growth. Well, a lot of 12-step work is integration and growth. And so you skip all of those pre-steps that are so critical.
Yeah.
And so really, and that's a lot why you have people very far in recovery in 12 steps sometimes. But all the initial ones, people who are in early recovery, they leave often because it's like they're not ready for that integration and growth piece.
Yeah.
They have
create safety first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got to create that safety.
You're really onto something. I love this.
Oh, thank you.
Well, and it's
a God thing.
Yeah,
I have to give
for
him
real. And I think that when you find true principles, you'll see them work across lots of different outlets. But these are some of the same principles that Steve and James and all the authors of our the Unashamed Unafraid recovery booklet and the groups we're going to be running. That's what he keeps saying to me, and it suddenly has clicked recently for me that like you may not be ready for this next thing in recovery if you haven't created safety. Like you have to stay in whatever phase of recovery you're in for as long as you need to be there in order for you to be ready to move on to the next stage. So I love that you started with safety.
Thank you. Well, yeah, and one of the things, so in traditional 12 steps, people get to step 4 often and they stop because step 4 is hard. And it's one of those, it's step 4. It's like we're looking at character defects, right? Well, we decided character defects is a shaming term. We don't love that term. And everybody does come with flaws. We all struggle. But what can we do, to be different there? And so we decided to look at inventories instead, so that we can say, okay, I am struggling in these ways and meet people where they are. So our step 4, people could do a traditional one, although we'd encourage them to call it something other than character defects. But they can look through our website, and our website is where we host on ts12anon.org. And you can go and you can look on step 4 inventories and be like, I relate more with, I'm needing safety and stabilization right now. And then they can go and see a list of suggested inventories or make up their own. And they can figure out where they are so that they can still progress through the steps and not get to 4 and be like, I'm going to be here for years or months.
I have a lot of guys that I dealt with in 12-step that they were there, even clients that come in now. I've been working on my 4-step for, I don't know, a year.
Yep.
I'm like, there's a lack of safety that's there.
Yes.
Right? They're too scared. They don't feel safe enough to be honest. And that's one of the very first things of like our model had accepted, our recovery model is safety creates honesty. Oh. And for them to be able to do that, they got to have that safety first.
That's amazing. I'm cheering you guys on. This is amazing what you're doing.
You as well. That's why you're here. That's why we got you on here.
Well, thanks.
It's awesome.
I'm honored to be here. Thanks.
So tell us about some of the other important aspects of the way that you guys do things that may be different than what we've seen traditionally within 12 steps and other recovery groups.
So for instance, when you come to a meeting, what I started to notice was in some meetings I went to, they did incorporate prayer. And sometimes 12 steps don't incorporate prayer. But for me, it's like if we're going to have a higher power, we need to incorporate prayer in some way. But how do you do that so that it doesn't gain a flavor of one religion or whatever? And so what we did was we have a moment of silence in the beginning and at the end for a closing where people can pause and they can choose to pray or they can choose to do something else, but it's a silent prayer in their heart. And that way we're still incorporating prayer and bringing in everybody's beliefs in their own way without feeling like we're telling somebody else how to pray or what that looks like or something like
Love
that.
that. Love that because even though it's just like, how long do you do it for? A minute?
Yeah.
2 minutes?
A minute maybe. Yeah.
So just allowing someone, most people don't even sit in silence for a minute.
Yeah.
They don't. And so like even at boot camp, that's where the magic happens at the boot camps and the women's retreats, is that time spent with God. And even if it is just taking 1 minute a day, or like you're in that case, you're going to this meeting and it allows you to be able to just calm yourself so that you can arrive.
Right.
So you can be present and be there and be like, I'm opening my heart to whatever is coming at me tonight.
Yeah.
What do I need to open my heart to listen to her story or what has she had to share that I'm going to resonate with? So like, help me open my heart to whatever that looks like.
Yeah. I love
so
that.
I love that. Love where you're doing that moment of silence.
I love where you say arrive. Yes, because I mean, really, if we can't take that space to get there, then it's hard to be present in whatever we're doing. So it's just so critical. Yeah. And I guess I'll point out another one because I love our step 11. It's one of my very favorites. A traditional step 11, and it's cool, but it's conscious contact with God, but it's prescriptive. It's like, and you only ask, you only say this or whatever. And ours it gives so many different options of just ideas of how people could communicate with God. And it could be through music, and they could create a playlist or they could sing or something. I mean, one thing I was thinking about when writing the book, it was like, you know what? I don't think I want to be in God's way of how he communicates with his children. And so let's make this as big and broad as possible so that people can say, that feels safe to me. I want to connect in this way. Something else we did, and I'll just say recently, is that a woman approached me in severe trauma. And my heart just broke because she was like, I have so much religious trauma, and this is painful how it's worded. And so legit on the weekend, I took her feedback and I was like, I get it. Like some people are even harmed in God's name. It's devastating, and so we took it and made it more higher power based so that people could take whatever their idea of God was, or even at the moment, it's like, yes, I believe in God and I feel very harmed in this way. So for a while, I'm going to have to think about a higher power in a different way for a time until I can get to that place. And I don't want to replace God. I don't want to take him out. And also, I don't get to tell people how to believe, And so
So why change it? Like, why change your book when you were writing it, you're getting into it, you're like guided by God in that moment to be like, this is where it's going to be. And then someone that's in their trauma, right, comes to you and says this, and you're like, oh, I need to change everything.
Well, I didn't.
Say, maybe that's just like less than 1% of the people that you may even deal with that have that, or around 1%. Well, I don't know what it is, right? Just whatever. But it was enough for you to be like, you know what, maybe we do need to look at this and change this.
Yeah, it's
part of the
a
model.
Really good question, actually. Well, I am involved in other groups online. It is a common question. It's like, I really struggle with this God piece. And survivors have been harmed a lot. I have yet to meet a survivor when they look at it honestly, that at some point they didn't have some kind of God trauma. And so as I looked at it, I was like, okay, well, and also there's other religions. I don't get to say that they get to call it God,
Right.
So what I want to create is a space that's safe. And if eventually they can explore safety with God, awesome. I hope that they do. but also to create, I mean, it's part of my story. I would say it's a part of a majority of people's stories to have, to name a higher power as God. But I don't want to necessarily tell people they have to do that. I want to give people the freedom to worship how, where, or what they may.
Right.
And so as I was praying about it, I was like, I just feel so almost shameful, like watering down this piece almost by making it more higher power focused.
And I would bet he doesn't care. He's like, higher power. He's like, I know who it is.
Yeah.
Right? And so, and if that's what people need, if they want to say the ocean is a higher power, then what would the ocean say to you?
Yeah.
Right. It's really what God would say, but they make it the ocean or whatever it is. Right.
Well, I think it strips some of the rigidity that a lot of people have experienced out of the equation. It's a little bit more safe and inclusive for a moment while they get their bearings on what spirituality and religion and God actually mean to them.
Right.
So,
and love the higher power thing because, obviously I went to SA for a long time, Sexaholics Anonymous, and that was all about, they used a white book and it was all about higher power. And I love that because a lot of people aren't really like on God at that moment. And they're just like trying to discover really what, like you just said, Sam, right? Trying to discover even who God is or if there's a God or whatever. But I don't know anybody. I've been in recovery. I got in recovery in 2007. So I've been in it. So now 19 years.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know anybody, not one person have I ever talked to that has made it in recovery. Have they ever done it without a higher power of some sort?
That is really good information. Yeah. Which is, I didn't want to take that part out for sure. It was like, I like really struggle. And even the God thing, to make that more higher power based. But in the end, I was looking, I was like, it's not very inclusive then, of people. And what am I saying? You have to believe a certain way in order for God to provide healing. Well, I know people who don't believe in God that have received actually amazing healing. And I am of the belief that God is at the healing of it, or at the center of that.
Yeah.
He's the one. But it doesn't mean I get to tell them that they believe that, and they have the freedom to choose something different.
And I think that's different if you're going to like the LDS ARP program. That is going to be about Christ and the atonement because it's Christian based. They're not being like, hey, it's high power. It is like, no, it is all about Christ and God and all that. Totally. Going into it, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
When you go to different things like yours, the TS12 Anon, it's higher power based.
Right.
And that's beautiful. Either way you look at it, you just know going into it what you're looking at.
Yeah. I like how you say that. Yeah, because I used to be an ARP missionary, and for some people, bringing scripture and things into it feels so good and they need it. And some people, it's like, I'm not ready for that. I'm really hurt by this piece or something.
Yeah.
And that's okay. So we want people to be able to take what they like, and take what feels good and work from there. And we want to meet them where they're at.
Jeni, can you walk us through how some of this, the trauma-informed aspects of your group kind of guide the 12-step model that you use?
Yeah, so I would say it really guides the language a ton. I remember and I won't mention the book, but in a different 12-step book for family members, and it talks about how our resentment is as bad as their lusting. And I'm like, you're going to tell somebody, okay, maybe somebody in further recovery could handle something like that. But are you going to tell somebody who just discovered an affair or something like that their hurt feelings over this are just as bad as that, And so we have been very cautious about the wording. It is so critical to what we do, to where we meet people where they are. I think one of the main transformative experiences for me about this was I had been in a different 12-step meeting, and there had been a woman who'd been coming for just a couple of weeks. She loved it. You could tell she loved the camaraderie. Well, we got to this step 1, and it's worded not well, I'll just say. And she, at the end of it, she was brave enough to say, there's a lot of naughty words in here. And you know what? She didn't come back. It broke my heart because she needed the camaraderie.
Naughty words?
A lot. There are. It's shame-based.
Yeah.
And it's painful. And I think I want to honor what they did, because it was like they did the best they knew how with what they had. And they did a lot of great and beautiful work. And I'm not trying to criticize them, because I feel like they did set a foundation that was powerful and amazing. And we know more now. We can do more now. We can help people in better, safer, even deeper ways, so that they can come through this amazing, like, I don't know, people in recovery. Really, I admire people in recovery so much, because of what they're willing to do and how they're willing to hold up a mirror and say, what do I have here that I can change or fix, and what can I do to become a better person? Like, people in recovery want to do good. They don't want to hurt people. They want to look and see what they can do. And I think it's just one of the most beautiful ways to be a human, period.
Yeah.
Wow, that's well said. As far as the trauma model that you presented with the 3 stages, could you speak a little bit more to that, and how people in your program move through those stages?
Yeah. So again, stage 1 is safety and stabilization. Stage 2 is grief and mourning. And stage 3 is integration and growth. And why this matters is somebody fresh in recovery is coming in. Sometimes they can barely breathe or eat or sleep, and so these are the critical things. Like, and we're going to tell them, you need to work on character defects, or, that's damaging. Right. That's damaging. It's like, oh no, let's get to a place where you can be functioning at a somewhat normal level in order to progress. And so, but to be honest, it's also not linear. So, I mean, I've done a lot of stage 3 work, but at the same time, I often go back to stage 1. It's like, right now I need to breathe, or right now my nervous system's out of whack and I need some soul care, or I'm not feeling of worth right now. What can I do to meet that need? And then find good, healthy connection and things like that. And I can learn how to meet my needs in those ways without causing harm by progressing further until I'm ready. But I do want to say, I mean, because I'm going to say this, that stage 2 is grief and mourning. That was such a hard sell for me at first. Have you guys been through some, I'm assuming, right? Some impressive grief and mourning in order to be in recovery, I would guess.
So there's a good word for it.
Yeah. And I'll say the first time that I engaged in grief and mourning intentionally, oh man, because my coping mechanism to that point was like, I am hurting. Who can I serve? And it was like, which sounds great, right? You go to Sunday school and they're like, service is the answer to all of these things. Well, it was my way of covering things up. I think service is amazing, but it was like, I remember standing in my dining room going, oh, this really hurts. And then saying, who can I bring dinner to tonight? Like, legit, nobody even asked for it. Who can I bring dinner tonight?
So that you don't have to feel.
So I don't have to feel. Exactly.
Wow.
And
that's fascinating.
Yeah. And then as I sat there, though, just the words of my therapist had come into my mind, where it was like, you're going to have to sit in it. Oh, it was the first time I ever did that.
But I don't want to.
I felt that way. But I was like, what I've done hasn't worked. I've done this for so many years and it hasn't worked, and I'm not healed. And I remember, okay, I'm going to honor it. Well, I remember for the next 2 weeks, I did basics and I took care of things, but for all intents and purposes, I was a lump on my couch. I honored that grief and I sat with God. And the interesting thing was, though, eventually he took my hand and he lifted me out. Like I felt it. And I was changed. I was different. I was more settled. I was more compassionate. I understood more. It was like a maturity that I couldn't have gotten a different way, if that makes sense. And for me, I've come to see it's critical in order for me to go through grief and mourning to say, this situation is really intense and bad. I need a boundary here, and what is that going to take? Or my worth is worth more than this. I don't necessarily need to feel this way. But if I'm just covering it up with whatever it is, service, or it could be anything, then I am not going to show up as my very best self. And so it's a hard sell, I will say, to tell people you're going to have to go through this period of grief and mourning.
I see the wisdom in it, though, just the way that it's structured, right? If you're starting out with safety, and what was the other S word that you said in the first stage?
Stabilization.
Safety and stabilization. I'm creating a place where I can actually go in and feel the feelings. The reason I'm not feeling the feelings, and the reason I'm not taking them to God or allowing myself to sit in them, is because there's no stability in that.
Right.
It's never been safe enough for me to do that. So I love that thought.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, and then we need all of that to get to this place where it's like, now I'm going to work on myself, you know, and there's joy in that, because it's like, we get to reconnect and find all the joy and figure out what makes me tick. And, you know, I had forgotten my favorite color for me. Like it almost didn't matter because I was so busy fixing things, you know? So I got to matter in that stage 3 work that is so beautiful. And so really, when we're working, especially steps 4 through 9, which are the different inventories, and then we like to call it restoration, this whole restoration process. And we can restore even to ourselves, like we can make amends kind of with ourselves to where maybe we didn't have safety. Maybe we didn't know our favorite color. Or maybe whatever it is we didn't know, we can come to a place where we get to be discovered. We get to take up space. We get to matter.
You didn't know yourself.
I didn't know. Right.
Or maybe you didn't know who you were without your spouse, especially now that you find out they're wanting to leave because they've been having affairs. So you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore without this individual.
Right. Yeah, totally. And we lose I think it's normal to be like, there's this big problem, you know, and how am I going to fix it? And what am I going to do? That is like a normal way of thinking. It's not necessarily the way to fix anything, but it is a normal way of thinking. And to be honest, though, when we do engage in that kind of stuff, we usually see enough little things that we have fixed, we think, that it seems rewarding, you know, or there's like these temporary short-term things. And really what we're looking at is long-term things that we can do.
Right. It's not so satisfying or fun in the moment.
Oh,
Often.
that's so true. That's so true. Yeah. Can I tell you a little bit about, so, you know, in traditional 12 steps, there's a surrender process, right? We don't love the word surrender for survivors. It's a very triggered word.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. I mean, because it's like often survivors feel like they have no power and things like that. But we do have our own it's a surrender process. I'm going to say that, but we don't call it that. And we call it the rest process. And it's a little different than surrender in that there's a take action piece, because so often it's like, if we're looking at surrender, we're like, what can we give to God? You know, but in the end, it's like, but there is also, like in the Serenity Prayer, talks about, but there are things we can do, right? And that is missing in a typical surrender process. So our rest process is we release to God what we can't control only. We express it to another person just because there's power in being witnessed. There's real power in that.
There's power in you just saying it.
Yes.
Knowing that you don't have control over that. Even though many times we want to.
Right.
But knowing, hey, this is something I don't have control and I need to voice it.
Love that. Yes, absolutely. The S is symbolize. And so, I mean, I like to just lift my hands up and like, here it is, God, take it. But some people like to write it on paper and put it in a surrender box or burn it or whatever it is they're going to do. They're going to symbolize it. But the T is take action. And that is the part that is missing from most, to where it's like, what can I do? And maybe that is only self-care. It's like, well, I'm not doing very well, and I can take care of my of my system right now, you know, and help me calm down, kind of thing. And it's empowering to think of, though, what we can do, instead of think, I just can't do anything. I'm going to give it all to God. It's like, but there are pieces that would be healthy to take that we can do.
I like that. It's a little more grounded in experience and responsibility at the appropriate time.
At the appropriate time.
Yes, I think that's a key phrase.
Yeah.
I like that. How have you seen that be helpful for women who you've worked with? It's just women that you've worked with to this point, correct?
We do have some men in some groups,
Okay.
but
Just a
mostly,
couple.
yeah. But I will say the feedback has been humbling. It's going to make me cry because it's like
We're okay
that.
with crying here.
Oh, good. But to me, that's been some of the most rewarding part of it. Like people who've been working 12 steps for years who came to our program and we have them saying, I needed this. This was the missing piece in my recovery, you know? And by the way, we don't think we're the end all. Like we do encourage in our program that people, if therapy feels good or group coaching or whatever, that is it. Like we feel like we're a piece of it. We're not the end all. But the piece that we do offer has been transformative for people, and they have found healing in ways. We've just received that feedback over and over and over, that they've received healing that they were not able to get before or found invalidating in other places. And so I would say I've seen really beautiful things that
Wow.
are just humbling.
Wow. So what would you like people to know about your work or your experiences and story that you haven't gotten to yet, Jeni?
I think I'd like people to mostly know that healing's possible.
Hmm.
That really it's a beautiful process and that people really can. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to look a certain way like we think. Like, for instance, I really hoped and wanted my marriage to work out. I'm divorced now,
Yeah.
and that's painful. Like I never went on this journey thinking that would be the case. But here I am, and it is the case. And, but it's okay because, I'm okay with myself, if that makes sense. I'm doing well. I'm healing and I'm not healed and I'm not there, but I'm on a path that is really a good one that's fulfilling and beautiful. And I appreciate it a lot.
Love that, Jeni. Thank you. Jeni, if someone's listening to this and this has been helpful for them, how would they get in contact with you or your resources?
Yeah, we have a couple of websites. So we have ts12anon.org and you can
So TS12 stands for?
Trauma Sensitive 12 Steps
Love it.
Anonymous.
Love it.
Right. So that's why I want to make sure that it's TS, like Tom Sam,
Yep.
trauma sensitive.
Trauma Sensitive 12 Steps Anonymous. Yeah, ts12anon.org. And there is a tab to find a meeting. They could get the book if they'd like. There's links to that. We also have our parent organization is the one that I'm the executive director over, and it's called Her Wings Unfold. Her stands for Heal, Empower, Rise. And so we do cater to women who've experienced another's abuse, addiction, adultery, or abandonment. And they could also follow us on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook. And we have a podcast that's called Relational Trauma SOS.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Awesome. Now, on the TS12 and on, are they able to, if they're in like a different state, are they able to like create one and start a group there?
We would love that. So I'll say all of our groups right now are on Zoom. They're all online. And so they can join one of those, but we are interested for sure in creating different ones. And so if people are listening, even and they're like, you know what, I think we would love a men's only group of this one sort. We'd love that.
If you're listening and this was helpful to you, I'd like to encourage you to share this with someone who could use some of the insights and the knowledge that Jeni shared with us today. Thank you for watching Unashamed Unafraid. You can find us on social media at Unashamed Unafraid. You can get access to our bonus content and become an outsider at unashamedunafraid.com. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If this was helpful to you, it'll probably be helpful to someone else. So again, take some time right now to share it with a friend. And until next time, continue to live unashamed.
Yeah.